Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode number 22 of the OK Listen Here Roundtable, a very special NASCAR edition episode. I am joined today with the great mastermind, Philip Pilkington. Philip, very eventful weekend for us. A very eventful weekend for you. How are we doing on this Monday night recording?
Yeah, pretty good. Other than our guys finishing dead last and second to dead last, I guess it was a pretty good weekend.
Yeah, hey, at least it wasn't for points though, am I right?
True.
How are your Bruins doing? I haven't been keeping up.
They're done.
Oh, are they done? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Hey, but at least your Celtics are still in it. And they're looking good now that the Nuggets are out.
It is.
So how are we feeling about that? How confident are you in
Yeah.
the Celtics moving forward?
I think they're the best team left. I think the only way they can lose is if they beat themselves. I don't see a team going up there on their talent alone beating them 4 out of 7, but you still got to go out there. You got to perform. You can't expect you're going to have anything handed to you, especially this late. So it's all about execution, playing together. Hopefully we get Kristaps Porzingis back for the finals. But at the end of the day, we got to take care of Indiana first, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, so it'll be a very exciting NBA playoffs and more of that on Wednesday night's recording. But this is the NASCAR edition of the OK Listen Here Roundtable. So we'll get into our first segment of the day, weekly news. Not a lot coming out of NASCAR this week, other than two kind of important, not really dates, but events going on. The All-Star race in 2025 will return to North Wilkesboro, and the championship race will return to Phoenix as well, which kind of disappointed in. I thought this year they were going to do something different, bring it somewhere else, but I don't know. How many more years do you think NASCAR can visit Phoenix before they finally change it up?
Yeah, I don't know. I think what's really hindered them from moving is where else can you move it? Homestead. That's the only track, right? Because Atlanta is a super speedway, Daytona is a super speedway, and nobody likes Texas. So that's really your only option. Larry McRone's made a good point this week on SiriusXM's On Track, where he talked about one year when they did have it at Atlanta, how it was really cold that weekend, and they had to send all of their team to the local Walmart to buy all the hats, gloves, and undershirts there were. And he brought up the point that fans, when they go to a championship event, don't want to be cold. There's a reason the Super Bowl is always played in a dome or in Florida or California. At the end of the day, they want to be warm when it's an event like this, because it's not just the game or the race that you're there for, it's for the entire event, and people want to be warm. So unfortunately, it kind of limits you to two tracks that are feasible weather-wise and feasible from a competition standpoint to host the race. So I know it's not really the question you asked, but I would think there's less of a chance, just solely because, like I said, Homestead's the only other real place I could see them moving it.
Yeah, and I feel like in an earlier episode of this podcast, you had mentioned something briefly about. I feel like we've touched up on this topic before, but just talking about how Phoenix is so primed and ready to go for a championship race, and that flying into the airport in Phoenix, during that week it's a huge spectacle. The whole city kind of makes a big deal about it, and they're proud that the race is there, and so. And Phoenix is another one of those tracks where it's not quite like Darlington, where it's 110% reliant on the driver's skill, but it does have a good bit of that. So you really are getting your a good mix of driver talent there, and you're really getting the best out of the drivers at Phoenix. And so I don't know, I've kind of warmed up to the idea of Phoenix being there, but at the same time, like I'm a homer. I believe that NASCAR had originated here in the South, and I believe that the championship should be in the South, but I guess feasibly and logistically, I understand why it is where it is.
Yeah, I'm with
Yeah.
you. Kind of stinks, but
Yeah. So I know we'll get into more of the obviously, it's All-Star weekend is what we're recapping today, but the All-Star race is returning back to North Wilkesboro next year. Unlike Bristol Dirt, where it was kind of like, it was cool for a moment, and then just kind of the coolness of it fizzled out a little bit. I think North Wilkesboro is a great place for it. I think it's very nostalgic. And with the new pavement, I think it's a great track as well. The racing this weekend was not quite as exciting as last year, I don't think, but exciting nonetheless. Short track racing is as we saw this weekend, short track racing breeds short tempers. So and we'll get into that a little bit later. But what are your thoughts on the All-Star race returning to North Wilkesboro?
I'm glad, and we can just kind of go ahead and bridge it into our weekend recap here because there's no other weekly news we have. I thought the repave was great. My dad texted me and he liked the tire deal. Obviously, you can't force teams to take certain types of tires in a points paying race, but something you can do for the All-Star race, and it's something that would even be done even more once affect them even more once there's more wear and tear on the track 6, 7, 8 years from now. But I thought, to your point, like I said, it was really racy. I disagree with you that I do think it was racier than last year. Last year's All-Star race, I mean, Kyle Larson just ran away with it, and it was a snooze fest. Yes, Logano led all but one lap, but it was at least racy. I thought Saturday, well, what ended up being Sunday with the truck race, was more racy than last year. It was definitely a multi-groove track, 2, sometimes 3 grooves, which led to some of those tempers being flared, obviously. But I think that it withheld the repave. I thought it looked good with the trucks, and we know the trucks are exciting on short tracks, and really maybe one of the better short track Gen 7 Cup races we've ever seen. So not going to say it 100% was the best, and even if I was, that wouldn't be saying much, but at the end of the day, it was still a solid race. Like I said, it was a multi-groove track. There was a lot of racing back in the pack, whereas last year, Larson was clearly going to finish first, Bubba was clearly going to finish second, and so on and so forth. So it was good to see. I thought it was a great race, and I'm going to love to see it back next year.
Yeah, and I kind of want to touch up on the 3 groups at the racetrack because that was something that I found to be very interesting about the race this year. It's just the strategy that was going on because I don't remember who exactly it was that they were duking it out with for first. I want to say Hamlin was somewhere in the mix, but I know Logano and someone else for a ton of laps were just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, just right there next to each other, going around those turns, and neither one of them could seem to shake it again. I have no idea who was fighting for second. I just know Logano was. I know he was involved in it. But yeah, I like that kind of racing, and the more short tracks that I watch, the more I appreciate them, and the more I want to see come from short tracks. Yeah. Just a brief pause there. Trying to figure out how to segue into that's the thing. I'm trying to segue into talking about how Kyle Larson flew in from Indy, but there was no natural way to do it. But Kyle Larson, obviously qualifying for the Indy 500 this past weekend, flew into North Wilkesboro after qualifying.
Qualified 5th for the Indy 500, second row.
That's insanity right there. Well, with Larson being in the 500 this year, being a NASCAR fan, like I've never really watched IndyCar, but the championship is obviously here in Nashville. Now that Larson's in it, I kind of have a little bit more of a reason since I'm a NASCAR fan. How much IndyCar racing do you watch?
Every year I watch the Indy 500. I get up, breakfast in Monaco with the French Open on the side, as it'll be the first day of the French Open, especially if Nadal's playing.
You love you some tennis, don't you?
I do. Tennis is the best. And then throughout the years, I've gotten better about watching the regular season of Indy. I've been extremely busy this spring, have not watched any Indy race. I think I've only watched like 2 F1 races, just really busy with college baseball and the NBA and the NHL playoffs, obviously. But yeah, I mean, I'm a casual Indy fan. When I'm sitting there reading through the starting grid, I think there was only 1 or 2 names that I didn't recognize because I watched it a good amount. So I'm excited. It's always a special event and the world's most famous race.
Isn't there someone there in IndyCar whose name is literally Stingray?
Stingray, yeah.
Like, is that his first name?
Yeah.
That's sick. I'm going to try to convince my wife to let me name our daughter Stingray or something like that. That's freaking sick right there. He needs to come to NASCAR because the amount of merch he could sell, that'd be ridiculous. But yeah, so it's kind of hard to speculate, but Kyle Larson can clearly, based off of this weekend, can race in anything with 4 wheels and a steering wheel and with an engine. And so how do we expect Larson to actually do in the Indy 500? Can he keep up for 500 miles going 230 plus miles an hour?
The talent's not the issue. The issue becomes if the car's not perfect, how does he communicate to the crew what he needs changed to get it better? This is not a road course race. Not saying handling's not important in a road course race. This is a track where the handling of the race car like you mentioned, those speeds, really flat corners, long straightaways, heavy braking, it's crucial. I mean, you have to be a good driver to win this race, but if your crew chief doesn't and your pit crew doesn't do a good job setting up the race car, it doesn't matter how good of a race car driver you are. So it really comes down to how bad his car gets and how well he can communicate what he needs done, because that's the reason that people have not succeeded in both IndyCar and NASCAR. It's not that one is harder than the other. It's not that they don't develop a new driving style. It's the fact that when things go bad, they do not know how the car needs to be changed, what they need to tell their crew chief. And because they just didn't grow up running that type of car, it's something that already takes rookie drivers long enough to figure out how to do in NASCAR or in IndyCar. And then you do one your whole life and then you switch over to the other. You really struggle. So if he's going to struggle at any track, it's going to be Indianapolis or Texas. And obviously this race is at Indianapolis. So you just got to hope he's got a great setup and a fast race car. And fingers crossed that he can be the second to ever do 1,100 miles in one day.
So is what I'm hearing you say is Danica Patrick, and the reason she was so shitty in NASCAR isn't necessarily because she was a shitty NASCAR driver, but you're saying it's because she comes from an IndyCar background and just couldn't communicate to her crew chief what was going on with her stock car. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
Because that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah. And if you look, Danica's not the only one. Sam Hornish Jr. won 2 Indy championships.
I'll be honest, I really thought I did something there, Philip. Yeah. But now here you go, making a good point.
Yeah. Juan Pablo Montoya has finished as high as second in the Indy standings and is an Indy 500 champion. He struggled in NASCAR. There's plenty. There is, well, I don't want to say one exception because Mario Andretti had some success in his NASCAR, but he would only run the Riverside, a road course, where handling doesn't matter as much, and the Daytona 500. Now, credit, he won the Daytona 500, which is special, and this is back for restrictor plates and pack racing. But if you look at the only true driver to ever succeed at both IndyCar and NASCAR, this driver has also won countless dirt championships, has won drag racing events, and is arguably, you told me you were starting a racing series with 4 wheels and an engine, but did not tell me what type of car it was going to be till after I selected the driver. I would 100% select Tony Stewart because he has done it in every form. He's done rally cars. He's done everything. And he is the only guy to win an Indy championship and a NASCAR championship.
That's insane. Well, I thought I was going to catch you on something there because, I mean, everyone has their opinions on Danica, but I really thought that I had caught you in a rock and a hard place there. But moving on from IndyCar and Kyle Larson, because there's more than enough news coverage on that. But Ty Gibbs and Bubba Wallace ended up getting. They didn't do the All-Star Open, but it was on a. How exactly did they determine Ty Gibbs and Bubba Wallace for 1-2? It was like whoever's leading in the points or something this year.
No, they won the All-Star Open and finished second.
Oh, okay. So they did have the All-Star Open.
Yeah, they weren't able to do the heat races and a lot of the.
Gotcha.
So they didn't qualify for the Open, so there was no that they started determined on points, and then there was no heat races for the All-Star race, so they decided to do it based off qualifying. So,
yeah, as you could tell, I did not watch anything on Saturday.
No, the Open happened Sunday right before the All-Star race.
Before the All-Star race, I did not watch anything. So, goes to show how much I pay attention. Yeah, busy weekend.
Even if you did not see the truck race, did you at least see what happened with the weather?
Oh, yeah. It's hard to miss that whenever you're an active presence on X. Like, it is hard. Yeah. People were swimming in the infield. They probably had 3-foot deep waters in some areas, and people were diving into it. And that, I'll tell you what, that's one thing that's on my bucket list that I know it would have to be just like perfect circumstances, but it would be to go swimming in at North Wilkesboro. Like that would be a core memory for me right there. But yeah, that weather is insane. Truthfully and honestly, and I wonder if it's just God's great sense of humor that, I mean, like, seriously, I feel like the weather just travels with NASCAR wherever it goes. There have been more times than not where it's been raining in this country, and the only place that it is raining is where NASCAR is scheduled that weekend. Like, it's insane how that works out. And I'm serious. I think it's God just playing tricks on us. Just, haha. But yeah.
Hey, you want to know the magic way to put out a wildfire?
How's that?
Schedule a NASCAR race next to it.
It's a good saying. I like that. But you do make a good point. Like, obviously there aren't as many rain delays this year as there was last year at this point.
You just jinxed us. We're like a third of the way through the season. I cannot believe you
ah
said that.
well, I'll just
It's
edit
like
this
sitting in a
part.
baseball press box and be like, "This game's going by smooth," and there's like 12 runs scored in the next inning.
Well, I'll just edit this part out so that the public doesn't hear it, because that's how that works. But anyways, Ty Gibbs and Bubba Wallace, they qualified their way into the All-Star race, and Noah Gragson would win the fan vote, and Carson Hocevar, despite all of his efforts, wouldn't make it in, which kind of made me mad because I know you could vote up to 5 times a day, and he he fought really hard to get that fan vote, and I probably sent in every bit 20, 25 votes for him. But poor guy just couldn't do it, and it is what it is. Feel bad for Hocevar. I really wanted to see him compete in this.
I know too, but hey, guess what? He's a rookie. You're not supposed to make the All-Star race rookie unless you're Austin Cindric.
Well, hey, I'm still on the train if Hocevar is going to end up, at least being in the championship for one day. And so I think people will look back on this, and I think Hocevar is going to have a much more successful career than Gragson. So Gragson can have this one, but Hocevar is at some point going to surpass him, in my opinion. Moving along, nothing too crazy in pre-race other than Michael Waltrip called he called Kyle Larson little fella in the pre-race interview while talking to William Byron, which I mean, Kyle Larson is a short little pipsqueak, but holy cow, to call him little fella. He might have even said little feller, like little feller. But I'm not sure, but I just think it's hilarious how short he is. Little short king. Being called little.
And as short as
Reddick,
feller. Though. Reddick's really short.
No, Reddick is really short. Anytime him and his
Mikey's 6'3".
Who?
Michael Waltrip's 6'3".
Yeah. Anytime I see Reddick with, is it his wife or his girlfriend? I don't know who it is. Yeah, if it's his significant other, my wife will sit there and go, short king. It's just like, she always brings up how short Tyler Reddick is. It is the funniest thing. It's hilarious. But getting into the race, it doesn't take very long for the drama to kick off, and we're probably going to sit on this for quite some time. But not even 2 full laps into the race, Kyle Busch dumps Ricky Stenhouse. And coming off of turn 4 on lap 1, there was go back and review the tape. Some people were going to say that Ricky Stenhouse pushed Kyle Busch up the track, ran him into the wall. As so far from the truth. Kyle Busch just doesn't know how to fucking race. But Kyle Busch got into the wall, bumped into Ricky. Ricky got in front of Kyle, and then turn 1 on lap 2, Kyle Busch ran into the back of Ricky and dumped him, bringing him out of the race. Stenhouse would then go on to park his car in Kyle Busch's pit stall, speak to his crew chief, basically said over the radio to Kyle, like, hey, I'll see you after the race. And then Stenhouse said Richard Childress can hold his watch. And so for the fans out there that don't know what that means, Philip, what is hold my watch? What are the origins of that? Or do you even know?
I have no idea. No idea.
So
I guess it's like, women, and before they get him out in the scruff, they'll say, hold my earrings. And I guess because he's a man and he said, hold my watch.
I know that there someone, I didn't write it down on my notes here, but there was something a while ago before Kyle Busch was racing for RCR that Richard Childress told someone to hold his watch as he went to go get in a little scuffle with Kyle Busch himself. And so it was kind of like a callback or something. You can go look up all the facts on that. I don't have it written down here, so don't quote me on any of that. But I know at some point Childress and Busch had gotten into it, and Richard Childress just said, hey, hold my watch. But let's see. How do we want to move on from this? Because I don't want to get into the fight until we get into after the race.
Right.
I know the race was racy. Bubba held off Logano so that he didn't get lapped right before the competition caution. Maybe that's what I was referring to earlier. Actually, that is what I was referring to earlier. Logano was trying to lap Bubba Wallace for like the last maybe 5 to 7 laps there before the competition caution, and Bubba Wallace was having none of it. It just stuck with him the whole time. and held him off. And so whenever the competition came out, Bubba Wallace wasn't down a lap. So go Bubba for competing. And then
Go Bubba for competing when, Logano tried to move him a few times. He never did anything dirty, but he did short track Saturday night, little bump and run 3 or 4 times, and it never worked. We saw it work a lot started on Saturday and ended on Sunday for the truck race, but that was a hell of a job holding him off.
Yeah, and in most situations like that with Bubba, like I feel like had it been a year or two ago, he probably would have choked that, but he showing that level of just calm and collectiveness kind of gives me hope for Bubba Wallace, because like I said, before the season started, I feel like Bubba Wallace is due for a win, and I think he somewhat proved, or at least gave me a little bit of hope, that if he is put in a position where he's in first place, that he can hold off someone coming in second and not choke it away. So good job to Bubba. Showed some skill and showed why he belongs in the All-Star race. Yep. Yeah, I'm just going through my list here. All right. And then I don't really have much to say about the rest of the race. Kyle Busch would claim his second victim of the day with 83 to go, so 117 laps in. Ty Gibbs, he'd spin him out. And, so kind of funny to see. I don't know. It seems like Kyle Busch last night was just going after everyone that he hated. Obviously he was mad. Of course, I know this is not why he spun him out, but Kyle Busch had beef with Stenhouse a while ago for spinning him out in the Daytona 500 one year, and then Ty Gibbs took a spot at Joe Gibbs Racing. So it's correlation, not causation, but a lot of fans are speculating.
Oh, wait, you think that Gibbs took Rowdy's spot? Rowdy was offered money, turned it down, had to leave, got given way less at Richard Childress, and Ty was just the next guy in line. I wouldn't say
really
that he took his. I mean, they offered. Yeah, he was. There was a lot of negotiations for months and months between.
Loop me in.
Gibbs
why would Kyle Busch take less money?
Well,
that don't make sense to me.
He turned down money because he didn't think it was enough, and finally negotiated. There were some sponsorship things that fell through, and when it all happened, he got stuck. It was either less money or no race. So it wasn't like they were just like, yeah, and we're kicking Kyle Busch to the curb and bringing in Ty Gibbs. That was never the intent.
Huh. Well, Ty Gibbs still took a spot. I mean, okay. Obviously, he didn't directly take his spot, but Kyle Busch left. Ty Gibbs came in, so that's only logical to say he took a spot, basically. And Ty Gibbs will get paid a lot of money for it too, whether it's because he's a skilled driver, nepotism, or whatever. But regardless, Kyle Busch was on some kind of rampage last night and took 2 drivers out, preventing them from winning $1 million for their teams. But I don't want to gloss over the fact that Joey Logano won the race last night. I know that's not getting talked about a lot, but Joey's been kind of on a cold streak here recently, and to win him one here in the All-Star Open, not the All-Star Open, in the All-Star race. I mean, how big of a deal is that for Logano? And I mean, even the Fords, because Keselowski win, and then now you have Logano win, and that's 2 Ford wins right here in consecutive weeks. And so is Ford starting to heat up? And could we potentially see Ford, kind of hit their groove? Because I mean, I know last year we kind of saw the same thing. Ford hit their groove kind of late, and I mean, I know we've been talking about it all year long, but what are we expecting from Ford moving forward? Does this give Logano momentum?
It's really big for Logano, because if the playoffs started right now, Logano would not be in them.
Mm-hmm.
He's on the outside of the playoff bubble looking in. So I think for his confidence and Paul Wolf's confidence, it's big. Ford, from a mental standpoint, yeah, it's great. But, we kind of talked about how Darlington's the most talent-based track. Then you go to North Wilkesboro. He qualifies first solely because – or no, never mind. They did actually have qualifying for this. But qualified first and pretty much just held everybody off, which is great for him, or great for Ford to see their guy in victory lane. But at the end of the day, yeah, Buescher was good, but, it's hard to go out and say, hey, we've got speed when you go out there and win at North Wilkesboro. You got Charlotte coming up. Then you got Gateway, whereas even though a lot of that runs like a short track with the turns, you still got to have speed down the straightaways. Pocono's on the horizon. Obviously, got some more intermediates throughout the summer with Michigan, with Indianapolis, and we still need to see Ford go out there and perform at those types of tracks. They weren't good at Kansas and they weren't good at Las Vegas, and it's time for them to get up and perform at a track where aero is everything and not as much on the driver talent. Not that driver talent's not a thing at these tracks. And, maybe this is the momentum and the kick in the pants they needed to do so. But cautiously optimistic because, hey, show me you can get it done when you're manufacturing your speed means something, not just the driver talent.
Yeah, and I feel like right now is a good time of year for really any team, any manufacturer, any driver to start, heating up, because we're at the point in the season where, we're at Darlington, and then, last week we're at North Wilkesboro this week, and we're at Charlotte next week, or, this coming weekend. And so I guess all three of those are, you could almost consider to be home games, if you will, home races, if you will. All three of the fan bases that travel to those tracks are relatively the same. There's a lot of overlap. All the teams are right there with one another. And so it's a good time to, I guess, rest and do a soft reset on kind of everything. And, we're nearing the middle of the season. And so I think this is a great time for any team to start heating up and looking towards the last bit of this season to, put something together. So it's good to see Ford finally in the mix and starting to compete a little bit better, and glad to see some drivers getting in victory lane that, we were wondering, hey, when is this going to happen? So good for Logano. Good that he gets this win. Good that Penske gets the win. Good that Ford gets the win. 2 consecutive weeks. It's a big deal for them, considering they haven't won anything this year. So, but now, Philip, we get to get into some fun stuff. So, Ricky Stenhouse, as we know, waited around for 198 laps. Not because he chose to, but because he had to. Because there's no way out of North Wilkesboro Speedway. And big fan of short track, short tempers. And so after the race, Logano wins it. And in the middle of his post-race interview, we get cut over to Ricky Stenhouse and Kyle Busch going at it. Ricky Stenhouse throws, I would say, one of the harder punches that I've seen in NASCAR within at least the last 2-3 years. And the teams get into it. Ricky's dad got into it. And then whoever that tank is, it's sitting there on the number 8 pit crew, just hauling men around like they're rag dolls. Phil, before I start going off, what is your takeaway from this? What did you think of the fight? What did you think about Ricky and his response and Kyle Busch and his response? Who's in the wrong here? Who's in the right here? And what does this do for NASCAR?
Look, at the end of the day, Kyle, whether he felt like he was forced up or not, there was room. This is a track where it's not marbly at the top. He shouldn't have retaliated, but he did. And look, I know they didn't have time to tell him, probably look at the replay and tell him, hey, there wasn't much to that. You shouldn't retaliate, because he did a lap later. But he retaliated, is what it is. And clearly he was still standing his ground, because when Ricky came up to him, he could have easily did what Tyler Reddick did last week to Chris Buescher and said, you know what, you're right. I screwed up. I was wrong. And he didn't, or I guess he didn't. We couldn't really hear because all the fireworks going off in the background. But whatever he said didn't please Ricky. And Ricky took action. And, hey, man, that's racing. Look, you're going to get wrecked sometimes. And sometimes when you get wrecked, you've got to take action. And look, fighting is a part of racing. It has been. It always has been. It always will be, or it should always will be. NASCAR hasn't stepped in and done anything to anybody, as they shouldn't. And good storyline going into the 600. And hopefully it'll bring in some more casual viewers once they see the video of the fight.
Yeah, and 600 miles is a long race to be racing against somebody. And I'll get into, we'll get into the 600 a little bit more, but I think we could be set up for a real interesting matchup between the two. But here's what I know to be true, and here's why I'm glad that we do Monday night recordings. Stenhouse was on Stacking Pennies, which is Corey LaJoy's podcast this morning, and kind of spoke on the situation. And I know that after reviewing the tape, and as biased as I may be towards Stenhouse, and Philip, if my bias is showing a little too much here, please stop me dead in my tracks. But Stenhouse had an open lane. Why would you not take it and try to pass right there? Whether or not Busch was ran up on the track and Ricky forced him to run into the wall, Busch had plenty of space to move around, and Ricky never touched him. And it was clear retaliation by Kyle Busch. And in my opinion, it just a childish move by Busch. You got passed. Deal with it. Race him and get around him if you don't want that to happen. Of course, I know, again, very biased of me to kind of say that. And so what Ricky had touched up on the Stacking Pennies podcast was that he waited around at that hauler really just to, like we saw Tyler Reddick and Chris Buescher. Ricky wanted to see if Kyle Busch would at least be like, hey, man, I'm sorry. I take responsibility for that. Like, totally wrong on my part. But he didn't. Like you said, Kyle Busch stood his ground. It was like, hey, you still ran me into the wall. It was your fault. I didn't see it. I don't think that it wasn't you. And Ricky that's kind of what set him off. It was like, dude, yes, I'm going to address this, but like the fact that you were having zero accountability on this, that's when he swung on him. And so do I think Kyle Busch needs to take some level of accountability for this? Yes, absolutely. I'm a Stenhouse fan. Of course, I'm going to say that. But I do think that Rowdy is, again, it's indisputable. There's tape out there that it was his fault. It was Rowdy's fault that he ended up in the wall and bumped into Stenhouse. If anyone bumped into anyone, Rowdy bumped into Stenhouse. And so, I don't know. Rowdy needs to have some level of accountability. I started coming around, Kyle Busch, and I started liking him a little bit, but just I can't stand behind somebody who, first and foremost, wrecks my favorite driver on purpose, but second, can't acknowledge like, hey, I messed up. It's my fault. Like, this is where I went wrong. I'm sorry. Won't do it again. But no, instead, he sat there with that stupid little smirk on his face and looked at Ricky dead in the eye and was like, no, you're wrong, and I'm not. And that's when he got punched. So that's my take on it, Philip.
Yeah, you reap what you sow, right?
Yep.
Is what it is. Yeah, I don't think that was ever biased from you. Look, yeah, did Ricky take him 3 wide? Sure. If somebody was ticked off this week, every time someone took them 3 wide, we would have had a Royal Rumble after the truck race. And the winner wouldn't have even got to face the champion at WrestleMania. They just would have won the 36 truck driver brawl. So, I mean, it was 3 wide racing all week. That's what happens. And look, would Stenhouse have probably made that move in a points-paying race? Sure. But another reason he made that move because it was the All-Star race. We've seen throughout the history of this race, you make moves you don't normally probably make. Do you think Dale's passing somebody? Well, that's a bad analogy. I was going to say, do you think Dale's passing somebody in the grass in 87 if it's a points-paying race? But it was Dale. But, is Davey Allison wrecking or not Davey Allison, sorry, is Kyle Petty wrecking Dale Earnhardt in turn 4 in 1992 if it's not an all-star race coming to the checkered flag? Heck no, because, he'd get his butt beat. But, Earnhart's laughing about it after the race. So it's an all-star race, right? You got to make some moves you don't normally make, and sometimes it costs you, sometimes it costs other people. But, at the end of the day, it doesn't excuse Rowdy for just straight up dumping somebody. And here we are. And he got a nice shot to the temple because of it. And at the end of the day, at least it didn't cost anybody points. It cost Ricky a shot at $1 million, but hindsight, I know it's 2020. Nobody was catching Joey anyways. So at the end of the day, Stenhouse just didn't get as many laps.
Yeah. So, it adds to the drama of it. 600 miles is going to be a long race. And I would like to imagine if the two kind of get intertwined with one another that, there's probably going to be a little bit of bump in there, but knowing Rowdy, he'll probably fucking dump him, but who knows? But I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Obviously,
be careful. Chase got suspended after the 600 last year.
This is true. So now there hasn't been anything released, and if there is going to be any kind of suspensions, fines, whatever the case may be, I think we can expect for those to come out, tomorrow, I believe is what I heard. And so we don't have any news on that just yet, but I'm sure there's something coming for, one, if not both of them. Kyle obviously for dumping Ricky for, basically assaulting the guy. So, but we'll have to wait and see for tomorrow or today if you're listening to this on Tuesday. Now, so obviously during races and events, I like to take to Twitter. You can follow me on Twitter at OKLHDawson. I have sat here, Philip, in my 3 years of making sports content, and I've said some pretty horrendous things about the Duke Blue Devils. I have, enticed NC State fans to riot against me. I've had death threats from Oklahoma State fans and Texas fans who, try to.
You're a troll.
Yeah. Yeah. Obviously, I like to get a rise out of people a little bit, but I try to back everything I say up with facts. And last night I tweeted out, it was a comment. I commented under somebody and just said it was about Ricky Stenhouse's dad getting involved. And I had tweeted out, hey, them Stenhouse is standing on business. And for the first time in my career, Philip, I got called a fat fuck. Someone came on there and called me a fat fuck. And I just, look.
Wait. I hope you realize this is the first time you've been called that on Twitter.
Oh, yeah. On X. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
On X.
My point is, I'm sure in all the years of us getting into scuffles at practice or whatever, Brock or I1 called you that at some point.
I have been called a fat fuck so many times in my life. Okay. So many times.
I'm just making sure.
And that's okay.
I'm just making sure you didn't think it was the first time.
Yeah, but the point that I'm trying to make here is, of all the times that someone could have, actually trying to be offensive, called me a fat fuck. What? I wasn't even, going against anyone. All I said was them Stenhouses are standing on business. Of all the reasons to call me a fat fuck, that was it. I figured it was probably coming at some point or another. Obviously, if you're watching on the YouTube, I am not the smallest guy on planet Earth, okay? Obviously. Anyone can see that. So I figured it was coming. I do tend to get underneath the skin of a lot of sports fans. But me not going after anyone in particular and still getting called a fat fuck, I just is like, this is not where I expected this to happen. So you can all go find me on X at OKLHDawson and look at that whole exchange. But I just thought that was funny, and I wanted to put it in this podcast so I could look back on it one day. But
hey, it'll be a special day in history.
So, got called a fat.
All the stuff you've said.
Do what?
And you've never gotten called that. I said all the crazy crap you put on.
Oh, dude, I put so much crazy content out there. Go check it out on OKListenHere.com. I put, again, everything that I say and everything, any articles that I write, I try to back up with as many facts as possible. Just so that I do have some level of defense and validity towards what I do say. Because at the end of the day, I do want to have a decent level of validity. But man, I'm telling you what, the fact that the fat fuck comment came from this little scuffle right here, it shocked me. Because, really, I do have a tendency to get under the skin of a lot of people. So that was fun. That was a fun little interaction. My phone obviously was blowing up all night long because I've made my entire brand being a Ricky Stenhouse fan, which, I accidentally on purpose, whatever. It's cool to see all the text messages coming. I do thoroughly enjoy the attention that I got last night. But anyways, regarding North Wilkesboro and the All-Star race, Phil, that's all I got for you recapping this race. You got anything else for us?
Now let's tip our cap and shake our head. We're at 40 minutes, so let's do it quick.
All right, Philip, who are you tipping your cap to today?
I'm going to go to Brennan Queen. First career Truck Series starts 26th, finishes 4th, passed over 65 trucks for position, so not including trucks that he passed that were on a different lap than him. He drove his way to the front, had a pit penalty, drove his way back to the front, and honestly probably was the second best guy out there other than Corey Heim on Saturday and into Sunday. So really cool to see guys who never raced before at this level go out there and finish 4th.
Fair enough. Again, I know I said this last week, but I love it whenever you bring up someone from one of the lower series on who you're tipping your cap to, because it's not something that a lot of people pay attention to. So, for me, I'm going to tip my cap to North Wilkesboro and Speedway Motorsports Incorporated. Again, put on just another, last year, the novelty of it and the nostalgia of North Wilkesboro coming back, that was a big draw. But, from what I heard and from what I saw online and on social media, it was just another great event all around. Everyone that went seemed to really enjoy it. And, dealing with the rain and the elements and all that, they did that gracefully, and the new repave, made some really great racing as we saw. And so tipping my cap to SMI this week.
All right, so moving on to shaking my head, and there's a lot of people you tip your cap to, because I was originally, when I saw the racing, was going to choose SMI. I was going to choose Rowdy for what he did. And then with 5 laps to go, Chris Buescher had been laying back, saving tires. They were talking about, is he laying back to make one final push on Kyle Larson? And then either Boyer or Harvick said, yes, he is. And Mike Joyce said, and there he goes. Camera didn't cut to him. He pauses and says, and there he goes. And I think he even said, coming out of turn 4, coming out of turn 2, like letting them know what camera they should cut to. And they never cut to it.
Wow.
How do you keep making the same mistakes every week? Okay, we don't have time for me to rant, but Fox sucks. Actually, Fox is fine. It's whoever their producer is for NASCAR either needs to A, be fired, or B, learn about NASCAR. How do you produce a NASCAR race and not know about NASCAR? At least football's easy. It's like, do the big camera. We'll do different replays.
I would love to know the answer to that question and how long that they've been doing this job for, because I
want to be on a live production.
Yeah, because I've seen how live productions operate, at obviously not at a NASCAR level, but at the collegiate sports level. I understand, kind of what the war room looks like, if you will, the producer's room, and how to cut the cameras and what that looks like and how they do it and why they do it, et cetera, et cetera. And truly and honestly, I believe that I don't know who it is that's making, the camera shift to this camera, that camera, whatever, but no, you're absolutely right. Whoever it is needs to get fired, needs to learn how to pick up on cues from the commentators. And it's ridiculous. It's a, I feel like we shake our heads towards Fox and the broadcast and, the producer, someone from Fox every single week for not cutting to, what the people actually want to see. So, that's a great shake in your head. Who am I going to shake my head to? I'm going to shake my head, despite my Ricky Stenhouse bias, I'm going to shake my head to the entire number 47 Camaro pit crew. And the reason for that is if you watch that whole interaction, there was one guy on that number 8 hauler who just manhandled everyone. Just everyone on the 47 was slinging dudes around like they were ragdolls. Just absolutely embarrassed the shit out of the number 47 pit crew. So just for looking weak, I'm shaking my head towards that number 47, crew.
You're not having them back you in a fight.
No, I'm not. I want whoever that freaking middle linebacker looking motherfucker is. That's who I want.
Power forward.
Yeah, whatever he was. He was an absolute unit. But yeah, we'll shake our heads to Stenhouse's crew. So let's get into a little bit of the Coca-Cola 600 preview. Of course, I've got a bunch of little factoids for you, and Philip's got his entry lists for you, amongst other things. But and you guys, I do have a source that I look up all of this information. You guys can actually go look out too, and I want to plug them in here. Driveraverages.com. That's who I get all this information from. And these are just little factoids that I find interesting that I think are relevant to the podcast. But since February of 2021, Kyle Busch and Ricky Stenhouse are in the top 3 in average finishing positions of active drivers. Busch with 3.7 and 2 top 5 finishes. Stenhouse with 8.7 average finishing position. In between them is Tyler Reddick, and he has an average finishing position of 6.7. Of active drivers with 20-plus races at Charlotte and the oval configuration, Denny Hamlin has the best average finishing position with 12.7, followed by Joey Logano at 13.1. Kyle Busch and Martin Truex Jr. are tied for third at 13.7, and Brad Keselowski is in fifth with 14.4. Martin Truex Jr. has the most wins at Charlotte of active drivers with 3 wins, followed by Brad Keselowski with 2. Other drivers that have won here are Blaney, Larson, Austin Dillon, Chase Elliott, Kyle Busch, Joey Logano, and Denny Hamlin. Drivers that are less experienced in Charlotte but still perform well here are Chase Elliott with 12 races, 1 win, 5 top 5, 6 top 10s. Austin Dillon, obviously the Dillon brothers have not really been that great, Ty especially, but we're talking about Austin Dillon here. And Austin Dillon actually won one of my favorite Coca-Cola 600s back in, I think it was 2017. I know I've spoken about it before on this podcast. Kyle Busch and Martin Truex Jr. were battling it out for first, and both of them ended up losing, and Austin Dillon ended up winning it. But he's racing 15 races here with 1 win and 5 top 10s. And then Christopher Bell, why do I have 5 wins here? He has competed in 5 races here with 1 top 5 and 2 top 10s. And so those are some guys to look out for. In last season's race, Ryan Blaney won the race, leading 163 laps. And expect a few sneaky drivers to find their way in the top 10 if history repeats itself. Bubba Wallace, Ricky Stenhouse, Austin Dillon, and Zane Smith all finished in the top 10 last season. And last year, the top 10 was pretty evenly split between Chevy, Toyota, and Ford, with 4 Chevys, 3 Toyotas, and 3 Fords, all in the top 10. So that's my very fast factoids of the Coca-Cola 600.
All right. Well, we're going to start with the entry list on my end. 38 trucks for 36 spots. Connor Mozak will be in the 7. Jennifer Jo Cobb in the 10. Connor Jones
JJC?
Yeah.
What's JJC doing?
Her second race of the year.
Oh, okay. You go, girl.
Yeah. Hopefully they'll qualify. Probably won't have enough owners points to get in. Somebody else have to qualify. I don't think they have any owners points running for MBM, which is the Timmy Hill team. Jeffrey Earnhardt. I don't know the last time he ran a truck race. That was a long time ago. He runs Xfinity every now and again. And then Jack Wood will be in the 91. 40 Xfinity cars for 38 spots. Chase Elliott will drive the 17. Taylor Gray in the 19. Eric Almirola in the 20. Dean Thompson will make his Truck Series debut in the 26. Do want to hit on that briefly. Noah Gragson in the 30. Rowdy in the 33. The Japanese guy whose name I can never pronounce, Ogata, in the 35. And Dawson will let you have your Natalie Decker segment. After we talk about the Cup entry list, 39 cars in for the Coca-Cola 600. The 15 will be Kaz Grau. 16 will be SVG. The 44, J.J. Yaley. 84, Jimmy Johnson, of course. And the 50 car will be entered for a team called Team Amerivet. This is a team I've never heard of. I looked them up and could find nothing. Bob Pockers did tweet out that some of the people at Amerivet were involved with the money team from a few years ago. However, Floyd Mayweather is not one of the ones involved with Team Maryvet, but I looked up like Team Maryvet Racing, and Maryvet is some company, and it literally brought up some like foot race that they like marathon or something they had sponsored to like raise money for something. That is the extent of Maryvet Racing. So I'm going to quickly say congratulations to Dean Thompson. It was announced that he will make his debut for Sam Hunt Racing. He's been very competitive in the ARCA series and competitive in the Truck Series, despite his. I mean, it's not like he's up there competing for wins, but being on a smaller team, not as much funding, he's been out there in the top 10 a handful of times, or at least competing in the top 10. So that's what I got. I'm going to go more into my analysis after I let you have your Natalie Decker reaction. And anyone else you want to react to on the entry list before I go into my preview?
Yeah, Natalie Decker, again, like I said a few episodes ago, I know you guys like it whenever I hound on her a little bit, but I don't have too much to say on her anymore. My expectations are always low for her. I did see that she's been making a few posts about her sponsor Bikini Zone, and of course, dudes are just horny about it. It's the most ridiculous thing. If you just want to see a bunch of horny dudes, go look at Natalie Decker's comments. It's the most insane, wild, outlandish place on the internet right now. Yeah. So I mean, that honestly,
right, that's what you got.
Yeah, that's what I got. But this whole Team of Maryvet thing, I want to do a little bit of digging on that, and I might even publish a little something on what I can figure up about them, before the 600 this week. So that's interesting to look at, and without Phillips' entry list breakdown, you wouldn't have gotten that information anywhere else. Only here on the OK Listen Here Roundtable will you get this information.
That is true.
And if you follow Bob
Alrighty.
Pockris, so there's that too.
Yeah, that too. Alrighty, so I think, just my personal thing, this one's going to be interesting. It's always a test of endurance from driver and from car. You mentioned that there will be some outliers in this. It's almost like, it reminds me of an ultra marathon. So once you get past a certain distance running, the women can actually run a lot of the same times as the men. And it doesn't become as much of a, men are always better kind of thing. Not, well, I'm going to get canceled for saying that if somebody will take that out of context.
Philip, ain't nobody
men are
canceling anyone over here. Okay, listen here.
the
We're
winning
cancel
male
proof.
is faster than the winning female, is how it really is. And then you get to a certain distance, and that doesn't happen anymore. Dawson already hit on some guys that normally don't perform well at mile and a half that performed well last year. And then you look at Corey LaJoie a few years ago, had a top 20, and there wasn't even a huge amount of DNFs. He just went out there and ran well. It's almost like this race is just so long that it kind of evens out the cars and the money that is brought in, and the best drivers prevail.
See,
but I thought of an interesting stat.
Before you go on to this interesting stat, I do want to interrupt you just a little bit because I'm curious to know what your thoughts are. I want to pose the question, how much of this is because the race is long, and how much of it is, hey, this is like truly home turf. Every team is right here. They fly out their sponsors for this race. This is the event, other than maybe the Daytona 500, this is the event of the year. And so how important is it for teams to compete well at the Coca-Cola 600 as opposed to other races throughout the season?
I mean, it's important because it's a crown jewel. And like you said, there's not only a lot of sponsors, but there's a lot of the team members that work for the shop that don't travel to races get to see it, and their families get to see it. Biggest reason they kept the All-Star race in Charlotte for so long was because they thought it was good for the shop guys to get a chance to go to the race more often. I don't know if that's why the other teams perform. I don't think it's that much extra motivation because when you go back to the fall race before it became the Roval, it was kind of the same players. You didn't have the outlying winners, whereas Casey Mears' only career win is in the
I've mowed his grass before.
Coca-Cola 600. You said what?
I've mowed his grass before.
Have you really?
Yeah.
And David Rudiman got one of his 2 wins. Now, that was a rain short and kind of wonky one. But so either way, you don't have I think it's more just the fact that it's a long race. But I did think of an interesting stat. I didn't have the exact numbers in my head. I had to look them up. But, right now, you and I have kind of talked about this podcast, is Alex Bowman maybe not to the standard of other Hendrick drivers. And I thought back to a year ago. And I think a lot of people were saying the same thing about Ryan Blaney. Is he just an average driver and not a great driver? He came into the Coke 600 last year with 7 career wins and on a 60 race winless streak. He only had 6 top 10s that year, or going into that race last year. He wins the Coke 600, wins the championship. Not saying I'm predicting Alex Bowman in the championship, but he also sits on 7 career wins. He is on a 74 race winless streak and has had 8 top 10s this year, including the last 3 races. Hey, could we have an Alex Bowman coming out party? Or better yet, even if we don't have a coming out party this week, maybe once he does win a race and he gets back. I mean, this is a guy who one year did win 4 races in a year. So it can be done. We'll see what he does. Just throwing that out there. A little interesting factoid I pulled up.
Yeah, it's interesting. And, it's something that people don't think about. And so this is just, again, another fine example of the great mind of Philip Pilkington. But here's what I will say in response to that. It's hard to repeat something. The first championship is always easier than winning the first or the second. Like Alabama, if they went back to back. It was always easier. It's easier to win the first one than the second one. But in order for something to happen twice, it has to happen once. And so I'm not saying, statistically, it could happen, yes. But statistically, I think the likelihood of that happening is very low. But you're right in the sense that it would be cool for that to happen, for it to be at a race like the Coca-Cola 600, literally a mile down the road from Hendrick Motorsports' HQ. So it's a storyline to follow.
There we go. That's really all I got. I mean, you know how it is, man. It's a long race. It's all about the how they adapt to the changing conditions. Starts during the day, finishes at night. That track is going to get a lot grippier, and you can't just set your car up from the end because you can't get behind the 8 ball early. Long stage is 100 laps. It's easy to lose a lap in that first stage. So, big test on the crew chiefs.
Yeah, and you know, one more point that I do want to bring up before we move on to the Backstretch Challenge is, you know, I said it, you know, last week or 2 weeks ago that I would like to see more variety in the mileage of races because we have less 500-mile races and more 400-mile races, and I like having, you know, splitting it up a little bit. But the Coca-Cola, because with each mileage, some people are going to be better at 400 miles, some are better at 500 miles. Well, there's going to be some people that are better at 600 miles. And so I do think, you know, just sitting here thinking about it, looking at the guys that finish in the top 10 that don't typically finish in the top 10, maybe that's a part of it too, is that maybe they're just a little bit better at the 600 miles than other people are. And so I think that's something to watch out for as well. So, got any response to that, Phil?
Yeah, I mean, I like it.
All right. Well,
variety is a good thing.
Well, let's hop on over and do the Backstretch Challenge, which it's kind of a big week here in Charlotte. Last week, I had Byron, Hamlin, Blaney, and Bell and Hocevar. Philip had Larson, Elliott, Truex, Chastain, and Reddick. And because it was not a gimmicky race, that's not correct, but a race where not everyone was competing, we just took the top 2 drivers. And, well, Philip, if we had done all 4 drivers, you would have won. But we're not doing all 4 drivers. We just took the top 2. And I had Hamlin at 2nd and Blaney in 5th. You had Larson in 4th and Chastain at 7th, giving me the win at 3.5 to 5.5, making the all-time matchup 7 Philip, 6 me, 1 tie. Meaning, this week, home track, we could tie it up 7-7. With that being said, who are you keeping this week?
Give me Larson and Elliott.
Sorry, y'all are going to have to deal with me typing.
We can't hear you typing. I can just see how slow you're typing.
Shut
you
up.
haven't even put the first letter in Larson yet.
Okay. All right. So you're keeping Larson and Elliott. That said, give me Hamlin. And give me Blaney. I'll take Blaney.
Alrighty, so I'll do one and let you get back to back. I haven't got to have Willie B all year. It's probably dumb to take 300 drivers, but give me Byron.
All right, taking Byron away from me. That's all right. We'll take it.
Hey man, Sunday's gonna be about beans, rice, Jesus Christ, and Byron.
Who?
Byron.
Who?
Byron.
I can sit there and do that all night long. Let's see. I want to think about some guys that I want to see. So, one of my favorite drivers here at Charlotte Motor Speedway, and at one point before I discovered Ricky Stenhouse Jr. was my favorite driver, give me Martin Truex Jr. That's my first pick. And then for my second pick, you know, if I wasn't mad at him right now, I'd pick Busch. Well, and he's not with Joe Gibbs anymore, so don't give me Busch. But Chevy does have, let's see, I have a Ford, a Toyota, and
you have
Toyota.
A Ford and 2 Toyotas.
So I feel like I need a Chevy. You know what? Give me Alex Bowman. I'll take him. Philip, you've convinced me. Right. So I'll take him.
I'm going to take Ty Gibbs.
Okay.
And Tyler Reddick.
I really like that Reddick in your garage pick. It's a good one. He performs well here. All right. In my garage, even though he might get taken out this weekend, give me Stenhouse. He's been performing well here the last 3 years, so we'll see if he can keep that up. He tends to heat up right around now, so he hasn't let me down yet. So that'll be that. All right, Philip. It's time for some weekly trivia. You want to go first? Okay, be honest. Did you see the questions that I typed in the notes?
No.
Okay. All right, cool. So I deleted them before. All right. So my first question for you, and yes, I'm going first. I'm not even giving you the option.
Right.
Who won the first World 600 and what year was it won?
1960.
Okay.
And it was like Jack Johnson or John Johnson or I know his last name was Johnson. It wasn't Junior Johnson.
You're correct. It is. I believe it's Joe Johnson.
Jack Lee Johnson, Joe Lee Johnson, or something like that.
Yeah, it was Joe Lee Johnson. That's who it was in 1960.
Yeah,
it's a good job.
Yeah. Alrighty. Races are measured in length based off miles, kilometers, and sometimes even laps. There has been one other NASCAR race. It was back in 2010 that was called a 600. Did not happen at Charlotte Motor Speedway. What track did the Subway Fresh Fit 600 in 2010 happen at?
Let's see. So not at Charlotte, 2010. Who won that year? Jimmy Johnson. That was when he was going through his tear. Can I get a hint as to why it was extended?
They just wanted to do another 600 for marketing. However, I will tell you that it was 600 kilometers. It was not 600 miles. So this is a track
what the fuck is a kilometer?
1,000 meters. And a meter is about 39 inches. So 2.5 laps around a
what is the
track.
metric system? I thought we lived in a capitalist America.
I know. But hey, no, look, there's plenty of it. This is a track that we currently reference how many kilometers they run at that track. We do not measure it in miles based off their current. That's your hint.
Okay, I'm going to spit out 3, and I want you to tell me if it's one of these 3. Darlington, Bristol.
Nope, we do miles there. We do laps there.
And I want to say like Watkins. No, it's not Watkins. Is it a road course?
We do a lot of times, I think, do kilometers at road courses. It's not a road course, though.
I don't know. I don't know. You're going to have to tell the people.
It would be where we have our annual championship race at Phoenix.
Really?
Yeah. We run 312 laps there, which is 312 miles and 500 kilometers.
Huh. Interesting. All right.
All right, second question you got for me?
Second question for you. Who won? I don't remember if it may have been still called the Coca-Cola 600, but the 600-mile race at Charlotte, the same year that the Carolina Panthers were, and this is very important. This is a very important tidbit of information. Who won the 600-mile race at Charlotte Motor Speedway in the same year that the Carolina Panthers were founded?
Founded, as in played their first game, as in 1995.
Founded. Not their first season, when the Panthers were founded.
Founded in 93, right?
That's correct.
I'm going to go Earnhardt.
Well, damn, you got me, Phil.
Yeah. I mean, he won here 4 times.
Yeah.
That was kind of when they were coming. I think Waltrip had already won his last race. I think his came in like 89 or 90. He's got the most wins there. So kind of law of averages gave me Earnhardt on that one. Alrighty. Who is the most recent driver to get their first career win in the Coca-Cola 600?
Huh. First career win in the... Is it Austin Dillon?
The first time the three returned to victory lane was at Charlotte Motor Speedway, and Austin Dillon was the driver.
Yep.
No one has won their first career win since. Ding, ding, ding.
Like I said, that was... I still reference that one to be my favorite race that I've watched in person at all time. Of all time. So, let's see. Let's see how observant you are of my social medias. Because I have posted a picture of me surveying in the infield of Charlotte Motor Speedway.
Okay.
Whenever they were configuring the Roval and laying it out.
Yep.
What turn of the Charlotte Roval have I personally surveyed?
I have no idea. So I'm going to go where that little U shape happens, which I think is turn 3 and 4.
You're very close. It's turn 2.
Ah.
So if anyone slips and slides around turn 2, it's my fault.
There you go.
But yeah,
Austin built that.
So, but yeah, I figured maybe you caught it on social media. I have a picture of me out there surveying it, so I'll see if I can get that up on Twitter. But I still got one more, don't you?
Yeah, I do. I just got to come up with it. No, I didn't. For the second week in a row, I'm not prepared questions.
Good job.
Unfortunately. Woo. Okay, I got one.
Okay.
Because nobody remembers who won this race. In 2010, when Dale Earnhardt Jr. ran out of gas with 1,000 feet to go, who passed him to win the race?
Oh, damn. Okay. Shit. Because I feel like I was at that race. I vaguely remember I was at that race. Was that wasn't the 50th running of the 600, was it?
I don't know. It's 2010.
Oh, God. Oh, Jesus.
So yes, it would be the 50th. Actually, I know it'd be the 51st because they ran it in 1960. You can't do the 51st.
Damn.
Oilers goal.
Damn. Shit. Who was it? I remember that race. Now that you say it, I remember that race. Is it an active driver?
No.
Not an active driver?
No.
Okay.
I will tell you.
No. I know who it is. And I remember it. I remember it specifically because I remember he was driving the number 2 Busch beer car. I don't know how I have this ingrained in my head. It's Kurt Busch. And he was driving a Dodge. Dodge was still in the series at the time. I vaguely remember this.
You were really excited to get this question wrong because you just got it wrong.
Are you serious?
Yes. This driver is number 10 on the all-times wins list with 60.
Kyle Busch.
Yeah. Kyle Busch is active.
Oh.
And I was told you he was not active.
Was it Jimmy Johnson? Oh, but he's still kind of active.
No, he's higher than that. I would consider him not active because he's retired. He just runs for fun.
Was it Tony Stewart?
Yeah.
I don't know then.
You never won the Coke 600.
I don't know then.
You hear him every Sunday in the booth.
Kevin Harvick.
Yes, Kevin Harvick.
This is 2010?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
It was whatever year that Junior ran out of gas. Point is, it was the year Junior ran out of gas, which I think was 2010. 51st running. Oh, Kurt Busch did win the 2010. Oh, no, never mind. He did. But that was not the year that...
Okay, so I was halfway right. You got to give me some points for that one.
Right,
I was not getting excited for no reason. I was in the ballpark. Yeah. As a matter of fact, I was on home base. Or at least sliding.
Sorry, it was... it was 2011. Either way, the year Junior ran out of gas was the question, not the year.
Okay, but...
So you're wrong.
Well, who... Okay. So, hang on. I got to... Hold on one second, because that...
I don't even remember the Kurt Busch win.
No, I remember... I just remember that one specifically, because... Was that one the 50th running?
was the 51st.
Hmm.
The 50th would have been 09, which would have been Rudeman rolling around in the grass on Monday because it got rain shortened.
Gotcha. Yeah, but damn, I remember that Kurt Busch race. I remember walking out of the track and seeing a whole group of dudes wearing the number 2. I think, what was it, Bud Light? It might have been Bud Light. I think
Miller Lite.
Was it Miller? Yeah, but I just remember him being sponsored by some beer, and people were going nuts, and he led most of the race. And so I have a few memories stored in the old memory bank, but unfortunately they
that
serve.
was good. He led 262 laps that day.
Yeah, so unfortunately my memory serves me wrong sometimes. So there's that. But yeah, other than that, heading to Charlotte this weekend, both me and Philip will reunite with one another in person this weekend, and so we'll get a picture for Twitter or something like that. But other than that, looking forward to this weekend in Charlotte. And Philip, you got anything else for the audience?
I just enjoy your wedding, and we'll all be thinking about you while you're stuck at a wedding, and we're in some people's case watching on TV, and in my case watching in person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you sly dog. But anyways, if you've listened to this part of the podcast, I want to thank you guys so much. If you are still here and still hanging around, tweet at me, or I'm just going to call it tweet because there's a big debate going on Twitter right now whether or not they should still be called tweets, and most people are saying yes. So if you're listening to this part of the podcast, tweet at me, fat fuck. Just tag me in a post that says fat fuck, and then I may or may not send you like a $10 gift card for the OK Listen Here store. But anyways, we appreciate you guys listening up to this point. It is always a great time to get here and to sit with Philip and chop it up about NASCAR, especially whenever my driver actually does something. But anyways, thanks you guys so much. We will see you guys on Thursday. Peace, love, and happiness.